welcome and thank you for registering for our second IMAR seminar this year. We appreciate you setting aside time to join us. The topic of today's seminar is multilingualism and intercultural competence in Norwegian Secondary Schools, presented by Irina Tiurikova. And in this seminar, Irina will present the findings of her PhD study, which falls under the Ungspråk project in the Department of Linguistics. Her study focuses on teachers' views on the intersection of multilingualism and intercultural competence. And multilingualism and intercultural competence are, however, very complex and contested concepts. And this intersection is very, I'd say, conflictual and influences how they're implemented in Norwegian secondary schools by teachers. I mentioned that she's a student at the Department of Linguistics. No, she's a student at the Department of Foreign Languages at the University of Bergen, and a member of the research group Multilingualism on my mind. And she has published several articles on multilingualism and multilingual identity. Irina is also the IMAR Junior Scholar Network Coordinator, and I'm sure some of you have met her and have enjoyed her beautiful smile and her presence. But before I call on Irina to present, I'd love to clarify on some housekeeping rules. We will be recording the presentation, so kindly mute your microphones to eliminate background noise. We will have a Q&A session after Irina's presentation, but this will not be recorded, so feel free to fully participate in the Q&A session. Do raise your hand if at all you have any questions, but you can also type your questions on the chat box as the presentation is going on, and I will read this out to Irina once she finishes her presentation. So thank you very much, Irina. The floor is yours, and I apologize for that error on your department.
That's okay, no problems. It's related very much anyway. So thank you very much for this nice introduction, Felicity, and thanks to everyone for coming today to this Zoom meeting. I would love to have a presential meeting, but I guess with Zoom it's okay to we all kind of adjust to this type of presentation these years. Yeah, and thank you very much for this opportunity to introduce myself through presenting my research. I would like to show with this presentation, I would like also to show the interdisciplinarity of IMAR Junior Group, since I'm, as Felicity mentioned, this year I'm a coordinator of IMAR Junior, and we are from different fields and probably not directly doing research in migration and ethnic studies, but in different fields that are connected to this. And my presentation, my research is one of the examples of this interdisciplinarity in connection to migration studies. But first, I would like to present a little bit myself. So as Felicity mentioned, I'm from the Department of Foreign Languages, and my field is foreign language learning, foreign language education, and intercultural education. So many concepts that I will talk about will be familiar to you, but probably understood in a little bit different way. It, of course, depends from which field you are from. Also, as Felicity mentioned, my research project was initiated and is part of a larger project, Ungspråk. This is 4 years longitudinal project, which is based on mixed method research, and the focal point and the focal point of the Ungspråk project is multilingualism in lower secondary schools in Norway. And just to remind you, lower secondary school starts at grade 8, and this is the period from grade 8 to grade 10, when students are like 13, 14 years old, and they finish this step of their education when they're already 15, 16. So we are going to talk about education to this group of students. And my particular focus in the project is the interconnection between multilingualism and cultural competence, because we are focused on, we explore the connection of multilinguals to very different factors such as I don't know, proficiency in languages, beliefs about multilingualism, students' self-perception as multilingualism, also gender, and many other concepts. So my focus is specifically multilingualism and intercultural competence. I'm in the 4th year of my PhD program, and I've been working together with the team, with my supervisor and the other PhD candidate in the project. And as you see, we already published quite some articles, and most of them are in cooperation. And in today's presentation, I would like to focus on my final work, I would say, within this PhD project, which was written together with my supervisor. And the focus is the interconnection between multilingualism and intercultural competence and teachers' views on this interconnection. And to be honest, with this article, I'm aiming to fulfill my kind of very selfish reasons in a way that the whole project was based on quantitative methodology. But while I was exploring these concepts, intercultural competence and multilingualism, I understood how complex they are really. And there are so many ways to understand them. So in this final work, I step apart a little bit from the quantitative methodology and use qualitative one to show through teacher's perspective, teacher's lens, how different the understanding of these concepts can be. So talking about today's topic, first of all, I would like to clarify a little bit what is understood by multilingualism in the field of foreign language education. I assume that most of you already heard this term, especially in relation to migration studies. And I think it's not a secret that in many public speeches, debates, especially in political speeches, multilingualism is quite often associated with students with migration background, right? But in foreign language education, it's not the case. It's understood in a more broader sense. Multilingualism can be not necessarily related to migration background. You can become multilingual through learning languages, right? So in foreign language education, multilingualism refers to either individual multilingualism, which means that a person knows a variety of languages. So this is about linguistic repertoire of a person. Or it might be referred to societal multilingualism, meaning that in a society, whether it is country or just region or social group, people use several languages. So in the context of this presentation, we are talking about individual multilingualism, first of all. And in our project, I should say that even in the field of foreign language education, even though this definition that I just presented to you, there is still belief or tendency to associate multilingualism with students with migration background. So what we are doing in our research, we are trying to kind of deconstruct this concept and to include also students who learn languages in school. Migration background, of course, we take into consideration this factor, but this is only one of the factors that make you a multilingual. And if we broaden this understanding of the concept multilingualism, this makes Norway really like a multilingual paradise to make research. And let me explain you why. Of course, we already mentioned that there are students with immigrant languages, minority languages, and around 18% of Norwegian population have migration background. And of course, it is reflected in secondary schools. There are students with migration background as well. But besides this, most of all, most Norwegians know two variations of official language, right, of Norwegian. This is bokmål and nynorsk, written variations. And students start, depending on school where they go, where they study, they start learning from the grade 1, either bokmål or nynorsk, and starting from grade 8, they start learning the second variation. for example, here in the area of Bergen, in many schools, Nynorsk is the first official variation of Norwegian, and then students, of course, understand Bokmål as well. It doesn't mean that all Norwegian students know both variations. Of course, multilingualism, as any language knowledge, is very dynamic and very complex, but we can say that there are students who know both variations in the same way. There are students who know better Bokmål and have some passive knowledge of Nynorsk, but anyway, Bergen is a very good region to explore multilingualism in this sense. In the northern parts of Norway, students also know Sami, which is official language, also the official language of Norway. And what is related especially to the foreign language education is that students learn English starting from grade 1 when they're 6-7 years old, and from grade 8 they also start learning a third school language, which can be for some for some students that can be their second foreign language or third language, or for some students, for example, students with migration background, it might be their fourth or fifth language, right? So in like the most popular languages to study in Norwegian schools are Spanish, German, and French. They are foreign languages. And students, of course, have a choice to do this or not. And around 75% of them, they choose to study a foreign language. And in addition to what I've said, there is also such a phenomenon as receptive multilingualism, because Norwegian is similar to there is a similarity between Scandinavian languages, and Norwegians might be receptive multilingualism in relation to Danish. They can read, Norwegians can read Danish, right? And Swedish. And sometimes the similarity between languages might be even more intangible than between dialects. Well, I heard that Trøndersk is very difficult to understand, so I haven't tried, but I can only trust Norwegians who said so. This complexity, linguistic complexity, and the fact that all students in Norway can be considered multilingual was actually reflected in the curriculum for foreign languages, the new curriculum, which was adopted in 2019. It came into force in 2019. And you can see that it has 4 core elements. One of them is multilingualism, and the other one is intercultural competence, which actually, for me, makes it even more interesting to look at the connection, since both are mentioned in the curriculum. So I was very curious about seeing, okay, but are they connected? And you can see it's not really a definition, it's just a description that curriculum suggests about multilingualism. So let's read it together. So regarding multilingualism, the curriculum says, in the encounter with the foreign languages subject, the pupils are already multilingual and have extensive language learning experiences from various contexts. By transferring their linguistic knowledge and language learning experiences from other languages they know and are familiar with, learning becomes more effective and meaningful. So what we can see in this definition is that the curriculum suggests considering all students as multilingual without providing an exact definition of multilingualism. I don't know if you saw any definition, I don't really. So it's kind of vague explanation, but anyway, there is a hint. There is a hint that multilingualism can be considered as a resource. I think this is quite clear here, yeah, because being multilingual raises the awareness about similarities and differences between languages, which helps us learn a new language. And also multilingualism means that we already went through the process of learning a language. So we know we have certain experience that can help us. Like if we already learned English, we can use the same practices to learn a new language. What about intercultural competence? About intercultural competence, the curriculum says, Knowledge about and an explorative approach to other languages, cultures, ways of life, and ways of thinking open for new perspectives on the world and ourselves. Intercultural competence means developing curiosity about, insight into, and understanding of cultural and linguistic diversity, both locally and globally, to interact with others. So the emphasis is made on the knowledge about other languages, cultures, so-called cultural knowledge, but also involves such elements as exploratory approach, curiosity, understanding of cultural and linguistic diversity, not only differences by diversity, which might include also similarities, and both locally and globally, which means within and across different contexts. And though the English variant, which was published just recently, says intercultural competence means, I still argue that this is not a definition. It's still quite vague, and to kind of support my point of view, my assumption, I wrote here that in the Norwegian variant of the curriculum, the word which was used to explain what intercultural competence refers to was innebarer, which I might be mistaken, but I translated this as included. Included doesn't mean really means. So again, this is not real definition, right? This is just a description what it might be about. So yeah, it's just gives you a hint how you can interpret. And the problem is that both concepts, multilingualism and intercultural competence, can be interpreted in very different ways. Like multilingualism, what is it about? Is it, again, as we discussed earlier, does it concern only students with migration background, or those who also study languages at school and become multilingual? Is it about knowing 2 languages, 3 languages, more than 3? Knowing how well? What about proficiency? Yeah. So the term that we use in our research is very comprehensive by the way that it means that we refer to multilingualism as knowledge of several languages and language varieties. Doesn't matter of how proficient you are in these languages and varieties, because multilingualism can be also passive multilingualism. For example, me, I'm Russian, my mother tongue is Russian. I'm passive multilingual in a way that I can understand Serbian, Ukrainian, Polish to a certain extent, of course, but still I can handle like very basic communication. Does it count as multilingual? I think yes, but some people can say not. About intercultural competence, things become even more complicated here, and I think you understand this, right? Because, well, from the point of view of a researcher who works in the field of education, the first question, what competence is? And many theorists, many educators, researchers argue that probably instead of the term competence, we should use the term understanding, because competence is associated with something that can be achieved, that can be measured. Is it really true about intercultural competence? Can we do this? Maybe it's better about understanding, about developing this, yeah, intercultural understanding, but not measuring it. We can explore, but not measure, right? And another problem is intercultural. What is intercultural? What is culture? And again, in social sciences, in humanities, this discussion started in the end of last century, we can say so already, about what culture is. Does it is it connected to ethnicity or nationality only, which reproduces essentialist views on culture, or is it about diversity? Should we include the concept of intersectionality here? Because culture might be, as Holiday, a researcher called Holiday in the field of foreign language education, he said that we should probably shift from the concept of culture as large culture related to ethnicity and nationality to cultures related to social groups, to small culture connected to different social cultural groups, because culture may be connected to generation, it might be connected to gender, etc., etc. So yeah, so again, lots of definitions, and of course, when we read the curriculum, which gives us so vague definitions, there are lots of questions that raise immediately. And more questions occur when we think about implementing the implementation of these new elements in the practice, because the main actors who will implement these elements the way they think, they understand them, will be teachers. Yeah, because yeah, we can, as researchers, as theorists, we can be aware about different definitions and choose the one that we think is the best, which replies to the most modern approaches in foreign language education. But it's not necessarily the case of teachers that they are aware about different approaches. Yeah. Some of them could be like they were students like 20 years ago when the essential approach was kind of considered as the norm, right? So foreign language education was about teaching students how to behave in Spain, how to behave in France. Yeah. So this particular study is focused on the following research questions. For the first one is, how do teachers understand multilingualism to cultural competence in relation to foreign language teaching? And since my interest was on the interconnection between these two elements, we also asked them about how and to what extent and how they see this phenomena as interrelated. So, and to answer these questions, we interviewed 6 teachers of foreign languages. And I know that 6 probably doesn't sound so good for qualitative research, but I took these interviews in the middle of pandemics in 2020, and I was very happy with this number at that time, because teachers were so much overloaded with all these new regulations. They had to adjust to new rules that changed like every 2 weeks. Some of them, they just, they replied positively to my demands, but to my request, but then they just disappeared, and I totally understand them. It was quite difficult. So I used some semi-structured interviews to collect the data, and then qualitative content analysis to get the results. Just a little bit more about the teachers. 3 of them, they were teachers of Spanish, 2 of French, and 1 of German, which actually also reflected the real situation, because Spanish is the most popular language in Norwegian schools. And 5 teachers were women. Only one was men. And first I was kind of frustrated, but then I realized that this is actually also very representative, because 75-78% of teachers in Norwegian schools, in secondary schools, are women. So kind of was quite representative as well. So what we found out about multilingualism, and I don't see my title. Yes. Okay. So about multilingualism, that was quite interesting, because I had quite different expectations. So because all teachers said, yeah, they agreed with the curriculum that all their students are multilingual, but I expected a little bit different results here, because similar research conducted by my supervisor, Osta Haukas, in 2016. She asks teachers of foreign languages about multilingualism, what they understand by multilingualism, if they consider this as a resource or a problem. Sorry, something happened. My presentation lives its own life, so I'm very sorry about this. And in 2016, most of teachers of foreign languages said that they didn't consider their students multilingual at all, because they, as you can guess, they associated multilingualism with migration background. And therefore, multilingualism was considered as a problem mostly for them. What our research showed is that most of teachers, they said, yeah, our students are really multilingual because they know more than one language. They know English, they know different dialects of Norwegian, reading variations. They also, most of them, they study foreign language in school, like Spanish, French, German, etc., etc. So in this way, they confirmed what was said in the curriculum, that students are multilingual, first of all, and multilingualism was considered by them as a resource rather than a problem. a resource because, again, as it was suggested in the curriculum, being multilingual raises the awareness about similarities and differences between different languages, helps you to learn a new language. It's also related to your experience of learning languages. So if you learned English, you can just think about what you did to learn it and do the same with Spanish. It was a little bit more complex picture with intercultural competence, and many teachers, actually, like most of them, I would say all of them said that intercultural competence definitely is connected to cultural knowledge, to teach students about different traditions, norms that are that exists in the countries which languages they learn. But the difference between these two perspectives was in how teachers connected this cultural knowledge to other aspects. And the first position, it was actually expressed by the minority of teachers, is that intercultural competence is not only about cultural knowledge, but also about ethnic and national differences. And this point of view refers us directly to this essentialist view. That was only one reply, but other teachers, they connected intercultural competence besides cultural knowledge to other aspects, like, for example, focus on diversity rather than differences. Yeah, and the focus was made on differences like within national context, as like across national context, but also within national context, and also comparison of there were examples when teachers emphasized, yeah, we are learning Spanish, but Spanish of which country, which region, in which country, because there is Spanish of Basque, there is Spanish of Spaniards, there's Spanish in Latin America, right? And all these groups, they have groups within with similarities and differences. Then intercultural competence was also associated with the understanding of culture beyond ethnicity and nationality, which is connected to the first point as well. And that was interesting also to see that some teachers, they connected intercultural competence to the reflection not of the like lifestyles of others, but also the reflection of your own identity. So it was about raising students' awareness about their own linguistic repertoire, about the diversity within Norwegian society, within family, also, etc., etc. And just to illustrate this two position, I would like to quote two sentences from different interviews. So the first quote reflects the essentialist view on intercultural competence, which says, you can tell that a French person is like this and a Norwegian person is like that. And I think it is important, if you are going to meet someone who is a stranger, for you to be aware about these differences. I think that this perspective clearly refers to this essentialist view on intercultural competence. And needless to say that this perspective is quite oversimplified and can reproduce certain stereotypes and prejudices about different nations. People belong to different national groups. And quite interesting was a quote from the other interview, which says, meaning intercultural competence, doesn't have to do anything with if they're Swedish or Polish or English. We have different cultures, like the school, it has one culture, a family has one culture. Culture doesn't have to be exotic. I personally love this, doesn't have to be exotic. And here in this quote, we can find everything, that it's about diversity beyond national and ethnic borders, right? And this is the reflection about culture as related not only to ethnicity, yeah, because you don't have to be Swedish or Polish to be different or similar. Yeah, there are differences. Culture refers to different contexts, like school has one culture, family has another culture, etc. About the interconnection between multilingual and intercultural competence, when I ask teachers if they see them interconnected, of course, there were different answers, and this was quite interesting that all teachers said, yeah, of course they're interconnected, because learning a new language, this is developing intercultural competence. But again, the question was how, because one point of view was that both multilingualism and intercultural competence are about raising students' awareness about cultural and linguistic differences, like French people speak French language and they buy baguette every morning, for example, right? And wear a striped t-shirt. This is, of course, I'm just oversimplifying here, but this is one idea of the connection between these elements, about the differences, and absolutely different perspective that these elements are connected, and they are both about the diversity, linguistic diversity and cultural diversity within and across borders. And one of the teachers, I provide here an example. One of the teachers gave an interesting example that multilingualism, raising students' awareness about multilingualism and the cultural competence can be connected by giving students certain examples. And here, an example of French language, there is a non-standard variation of language which is very spread among young people, which is called verlan. And the idea of this language, which was created by teenagers first, was to read all words backwards. So, for example, the word femme, which means woman, in French, in verlan would be meuf, just read vice versa, just read backwards. And both these variations exist, and these the official French language is this and Verlan, and both shows the variety of French language and also the variety of norms, linguistic norms among generations. So I found it quite interesting. And another aspect which connects both multilingualism and intercultural competence is that both these elements are about metacognition and reflection. Metacognition means that you are aware about how you think, how you learn, how you think. And this is quite interesting quote as well, showing that these both elements are connected through metacognition. You have to have this meta focus in both areas, intercultural competence and multilingualism. On the one hand, you get to know yourself much better, how you are working, what kind of learning strategies you are using. And on the other hand, through reflection on your own and others' ways of living, you better understand yourself. So just some conclusions. The results showed that there is really that both, first of all, that both concepts are quite might be quite differently understood. And I think that the main conclusion is that when policymakers write curricula or the documents, then they need to be more clear or provide some definitions, some clarifications of what the key terms might mean, because as our research shows, they can be interpreted in very different ways. But the good news is that multilingualism is considered nowadays by most foreign language teachers as a resource and not necessarily connected to migration background of their students. About intercultural competence, we can say that there is still both views on what it is exist in the field, but non-essentialist views are prevailing in the field, which is also good news. And this is also a conclusion and a suggestion, I would say, for further development, for further practices, that multilingualism and intercultural approach can foster each other and interconnected. And how it can be done? It can be done through emphasizing an exploratory approach to linguistic and cultural diversity across, but most importantly within borders, focusing on mutual understanding and promoting students' reflection on identity, and not only on identity of the others, the representatives of other cultural groups, like countries, but also identity of the self and diversity within your own society. So yeah, that's all. Thank you very much for listening to me. And if you are interested in the project, this is the link to our research group. And thank you very much. So I will be very happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Irina, for the very wonderful and articulate presentation.